Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah. I'm the social media manager for UN Women. And today I'm very happy that I'm joined by two guests. We have Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka. It's our Executive Director of UN Women. And I'm very pleased to also welcome Gabriela Cuevas, the President of IPU, the Inter-Parliamentary Union. Welcome both.
Thank you.
And today I'm excited because I'm going to talk with my two guests about a map, but it's not just your normal map of the world. It's the map that together our two organizations have released, and it's about women in politics. And before we start talking a little bit more in detail about this map, I wanted to ask our ED, can you talk a little bit about why 2020 is such an important year for gender equality and the empowerment of women?
We have, for this year, gathered comprehensive data about the situation of women in the world using the 12 critical areas in the Beijing Declaration. And that is giving us data across countries, comparing similar situations of women, that is helping us to learn lessons, to see the gaps, and to see where we have progress. This makes this year, therefore, an important year for reflection and reflecting based on evidence that is in front of us. For instance, we know now that the progress in terms of women's participation has only achieved a 25% move. Women occupy just 25% of the space, and that tells us that we really have to work very hard to achieve 50%, because parity and equality will be achieved when women take up 50% of the space. We also know that countries that have quotas have made better progress in this area. So we have one instrument that we can use to make the progress. We also know this year, in this year of reflection, that women still carry the burden of care disproportionately. I'm just thinking now, in this time of coronavirus, the majority of health workers are women. Women are also caregivers at home to their children and family members. So not only are they working hard, trying to save lives, they are also high at risk, but also they get back home to the caregiving role. That too tells us that it is important to break the stranglehold of disproportional burden of care that falls upon women. We've seen that some countries, we see in the evidence that we've collected, who have introduced parental leave, for instance, makes it much better and more possible for parents, men and women, to share in the caring of their families. So it's a good year because we've been able to reflect, we can see the shortcomings, and it has helped also to fuel the radical impatience that we have.
Great, it's going to be an interesting year and an exciting year. And Mrs. Cuevas, this map that we are talking about, can you tell our audience a little bit about the map? What is it and what does it represent? What is the kind of data that we can see in this map?
Well, the most important part of this map is that we are collecting data from a long time ago to evaluate how women are having seats in parliament, but also in the government. And this is a joint effort with women. Phumzile, the director, already said, yes, we're pushing for quotas. If we compare data, and that's why the map is important, from 25 years ago at the Beijing conference, well, only 11% of women, of the seats in parliament, were assigned for a woman. Now, 25 years later, it is 25%. Even less, it's 24.9 if we are precise. So that is not representative, that is not empathic, that is not inclusive, that is not okay. This map is showing us, again, yes, the presence of women in parliaments, but also in governments. For example, you can see that in 14 countries, there are about more than 50% of women holding seats in cabinet. But if we go to parliaments, again, we are only having 4 parliaments in all the planet having parity. Other important data is showing us that at the global level, the ratio of women in parliament is higher than in government, 25%, 21%. This means, again, that we are not having women taking decisions at the most important level. Why this is important? For example, if we go to government, only 1 in 10 heads of state are women. If we go to parliament, this moves to 2 out of 10 speakers of parliament. But this is important because at the end, if women are not represented where decisions are being taken, we are not going to be represented, for example, in terms of inclusion in legislation. There is a lot of legislation in the planet that is discriminating women. We are not going to be taking into account for budget allocation. And there is issues on health, on education, on children, on for specific women, or girls, for example. Or if we go to the other powers of the parliament, it moves to oversight or to be a true representative of the people that we represent. So this map, again, is important because it gives us a perspective of how are we moving in terms of having gender parity. Another important data that we can see in the map is this very comprehensive study is which countries are having gender quotas and which ones aren't. If we compare the 10 countries with the highest percentage of women in parliament, 7 of them are having some kind of gender quota, either in a political party or in the constitution or the electoral law. So yes, we need to move for affirmative action.
Great, great. Edie, you have already talked about this 25% as well, that women are kind of squeezed into 25% and that is not representative of our society. Can you tell us a little bit what, you were talking about generation equality this year, what can we do about this 25% and about how we get from the 25% to the 50%?
Clearly, this is something that we have to take up with the political representatives to make sure that they talk to the political parties. Norms and attitude towards women have got to change within that institution so that they also nominate and push for women to be sent to stand for their parties. We also need the electoral laws to support the changes. And as you know, we as UN Women always engage with the Electoral Commission of different countries in order to make a case for women. We also need to make sure that we encourage women also to want to take up these positions, because women are discouraged because of, for instance, the violence that has become very prevalent in the political space. Women experience cyberbullying. They are vilified. They feel that their families get harassed, and sometimes they are actually harassed physically and even killed. So all of these issues need to be tackled alongside providing the special measures that facilitates the entry of the women in the political space and the retainment of women in the space.
Right, right. And Mrs. Cuevas, we have seen on the map that it's 2020 and still there's very few countries, very few governments that are being led by women. But are there also any positive stories? Are there areas where women have managed to shatter the so-called glass ceiling, or where they have made really good advantages over the last years?
Yes, there are very encouraging stories. If we see 27 years ago, the only country that had more than 40% women in the parliament was Sweden. But if we see today, well, we have Rwanda, Cuba, Bolivia, United Arab Emirates as the countries that are having gender parity, or even more than this 50% of women in their parliaments. Of course, that is not enough. We are talking only about 4 parliaments on the whole planet. So yes, we have very encouraging stories now. There are women, especially women speakers, that are taking a strong position of leadership. But I would like also to mention the very inspiring generation of young girls that are addressing, for example, climate change, that are truly committed to changing this planet. So yes, we are benefited by a previous generation that fought for women's rights. Now we are able to vote, we are able to fight. But this generation has to be committed with leadership. We need to be the generation that changes the reality for women and girls. If we continue through this path, for example, now, the change, the increase of the presence of women in parliament is only 0.6%. Last year, it was 0.9%. 1 year before, 0.1%. So we cannot be moving this slow. We cannot afford that. Our girls, the next generations, cannot wait for a century to have gender parity. So I would like to underline the strong effort that UN Women and IPU, of course, is going to join it with generation equality. This generation has to be committed with gender equality. We cannot wait any longer.
Yeah, I think it is also good that in generation equality, one of the action coalitions is on leadership and women's movements. Through that coalition, we will be able to work with IPU and other stakeholders to target the promotion and the different interventions that are needed to facilitate the engagement of women in leadership. But this is also a task that has to be undertaken in the private sector. So we would also be, under generation equality, pushing for greater participation of women in the private sector, because as you saw in the statistics, women in the private sector are also about 25% in management positions. But if you go to the media, same thing. So what we hear and see in the public media is mostly what is represented by men. What we see in politics and who makes decisions about our lives is mostly men. And this just cannot go on like this. And it cannot go this slow. It has to be faster.
Yes, I think that's great that both of you are really stressing this for like the next generation. We can't continue at this slow pace, because otherwise, I mean, there's statistics that say otherwise it will take us 100 years, and we just can't we don't have 100 years.
No, we don't.
We definitely don't. So my last question is actually for both of you. And I wanted to ask, what are both your organizations doing to encourage more women to go into politics, more women, encouraging more women to take up these positions of power? But also, if you want to talk a little bit about, the people that are watching us, like the everyday people out there, what can they do? Anything that they can do to support?
First of all, at the IPU, we work directly with parliamentarians from 178 countries. That's important because that's the way that we can change, again, legislation, budget, we can work with the governments, we can work with the people we represent. So what we're doing with parliaments is, first of all, awareness on why it is important to have women in parliament. There are a lot of parliaments that are having 1 or 2 women in the parliament, and of course we need, as we already said. But that's not enough. We need also to work into capacity building programs. We need to advance into the environment that is happening in parliament. Sometimes, for example, you were asking about how to make women to get interested in politics. Well, the first challenge is how to enter into politics and not feel discriminated. How to be part of an environment that has a male language, a male environment, male rules. Politics were a male environment for centuries. So we need to change that. And of course, for all the women that are here in this conference, it is not easy. But that's why we want to change that, because we want to give better opportunities for the next generations. We need to fight. The other very important aspect that we need to work with parliaments is that in legislation, you can change different spheres. I mean, it is not enough to look for gender quotas in the legislative power. We need also to go to cabinet, to the executive, and of course to the judiciary. There are a lot of decisions that are made in the different powers of the state that needs to have a gender perspective. And that's why we need to go further into gender quotas. The other very important aspect that we have in the IPU is the different aspects of the inclusion of women. If we do not build the proper environment, for example, what if a woman wants to go to politics, but she doesn't have a good space, a daycare facility, to be sure that her children are going to be safe? What if a woman wants to be an entrepreneur, but the government is not having subsidies or properly designed financial instruments to get women included? So we need to work on very different aspects to make a good environment for having women in politics, but also women in all spheres of society, having equal field, equal spaces, equal opportunities than men.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, I just want to just add a little to what Gabriela has said. It's important to actually equip women with the capacity to lead this battle for their representation, because they can articulate very clearly what their demands are. But also we need to mobilize men to play a role, because they are already inside the rooms and sitting on the tables that are making decisions. They should ask themselves questions about who is not in the room, who needs to be here. And it's not just women, it's women of all in their diversity. It's women with disability. It's also women of different ethnic race. It's indigenous women. It's women of color. All of those questions need to be asked. And you need to make sure that men take a stand on this issue. They should not be bystanders, because if you are a bystander, you are already taking a stand against the person that you are supposed to be supporting and to be in solidarity with. So our mobilization for the changes that we're seeking for must be all inclusive. We must aim to have everybody take a stand and act on these concerns.
Great, thank you so much, both of you. This was such a great and interesting conversation. And for everyone who is watching, please have a look. The link in the message will lead you to the map where you can explore all the data and where you can have a look for yourself. Thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.